Vera Rubin is operational. A star collapsed straight into a black hole. Fresh images of Uranus from Webb, plus we're scanning K218b for signals from intelligent civilizations. All this and more in this week's Space Bites. People keep asking me when Vera Rubin is finally going live. Well, it went live. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. So on February 24th, it kicked off full-time operations, capturing images of the sky every 40 seconds, then shifting to the next patch and just continuing that rhythm. And it will keep doing exactly that for the next 10 years. Every time it swings back to the same spot, it now holds this template reference image. So, if anything new appears, the powerful computers working with Vera Rubin will flag it instantly and hand it straight to astronomers. On that very first night, February 24th, they fired off 800,000 alerts. We're talking supernovae, active galactic nuclei, all kinds of transient events, comets, asteroids, you name it. But this is only the start. Once the system is fully tuned, once they add more software and build more reference images, they're aiming for 7 million alerts every single night. It's a total fire hose of data. And because they want to turn those alerts around in about 2 minutes, Vera Rubin snaps the image, spots the new stuff in the reference frame, and sends the alert so astronomers can jump on follow-up observations right away. This is huge when supernovae explode. You want to catch the moments after they happen. Vera Rubin has partnered with 7 different data brokers who will push this information out to astronomers and observatories worldwide. But these feeds will also be completely public. So you and I can jump in, watch the live stream of new discoveries, spot brand new supernovae, and basically ride along as all this fresh data floods the internet. And so here we are. We are now in the era of Vera Rubin. I guess I'll have to record 800,000 Space Bites episodes every night just to keep up with everything we're about to find. We'll see. Now, if you want more background on how Vera Rubin operates and the technologies behind it, I sat down with Program Director Dr. Edward A.R. right here on the channel, and we covered every single part of this telescope. I've also got more interviews lined up with the folks handling the data pipeline, so stay tuned. We're doing full court press coverage of Vera Rubin now that it's finally up and running. There's a theory that certain massive stars, instead of exploding as supernovae, simply collapse straight into black holes. The way the theory works is you have a star tens of times the sun's mass, fusing heavier and heavier elements until it reaches iron. Iron fusion releases no energy, so the core collapses. As it does, neutrinos surge outward and create a blast wave. Depending on how strong that wave is, the star either detonates or quietly implodes into a black hole. Catching one of these in the act is incredibly tricky. Think about it. You have to image an entire galaxy and then notice that one single star out of potentially 100 billion has vanished. That's tricky. Astronomers think they've done exactly that. They dug through archival infrared data from NASA's NEO-WISE spacecraft, which surveyed the same galaxy from 2009 to 2022. In 2014, a star started brightening in the infrared. They kept imaging the region every 6 months all the way to 2022. But by 2022, it had essentially disappeared. Follow-up with Hubble showed it was gone in visible light too, but a faint near-infrared source remained. So the astronomers believe they watched one of these stars implode, not detonate as a supernova, just quietly disappear into a black hole. There's a term I like that people are calling this an unnova, and I think it's perfect. You get a supernova, you get an unnova. So this is the first clear example. But when you remember the previous conversation about Vera Rubin, imagine Vera Rubin scanning whole galaxies and spotting stars that simply vanish. That could hand us dozens more direct collapse black holes. We've got the story on Universe Today from Evang, and it's some serious detective work to figure out exactly what happened in that galaxy. And speaking of galaxies, when you picture a standard traditional galaxy like the Milky Way, you've got all the stars, but you also have all the planets, all the moons, all the comets, all the Kuiper belts, all the gas and dust that fills the galaxy. You got the halo of hot gas surrounding it. And of course, you've got the dark matter that actually makes up most of the mass in a galaxy. But galaxies come in wildly different ratios of regular matter to dark matter. And in some extreme cases, astronomers have found galaxies that are almost entirely dark matter with very little regular matter. These are very hard to find, but there are a couple of clues. So astronomers went looking for groups of globular clusters. Globular clusters are these compact balls of stars that orbit galaxies like the Milky Way. We have dozens around ours. They're some of my favorite objects to look at in a small telescope. Their origin isn't entirely known, but they're thought to be the leftover cores of dwarf galaxies. All the other material got stripped away, leaving this compact core of stars. Dark matter galaxies should do the same thing. So astronomers found a galaxy that appears to have a group of globular clusters orbiting around nothing. And not nothing. When they followed up with powerful telescopes, they found a faint glow of stars coming from that region. You're not getting the big bright stars we see in galaxies like the Milky Way or Andromeda, but you're still getting some glow of presumably small red stars. And those globular clusters account for about 16% of the total brightness, which is a ludicrous percentage compared to the Milky Way. So now we have another tool. Look for clusters of globular clusters floating in space, and you might have found a dark matter galaxy they're orbiting. We got the story from Evang. And now we've got some stunning new images from James Webb of your favorite planet, Uranus. And this is very cool. Astronomers used Webb to capture one complete rotation of Uranus. When you think about Uranus, right, it's flipped over onto its side and rotates almost like it's rolling around the solar system. And it's known to have a magnetic field in the same way Jupiter does, in the same way Earth does. In these images, they cataloged a full rotation of Uranus and tracked the atmosphere in 3 dimensions so they could see higher and lower altitude clouds whipping around the planet. They were also able to track auroras lighting up the atmosphere of Uranus. And I always love when James Webb is used to target objects inside the solar system. It's not just for deep space. It works right here in our own backyard. The solar system is surrounded by a bubble. And I'm not talking about all those AI data centers everyone's planning to launch. That bubble is caused by the solar wind coming off the sun. You've got solar wind streaming from around the equator of the sun and solar wind coming from the poles. Together, they push back the interstellar medium, the combined solar winds of all the other stars, and create this giant protective shell. The Voyager spacecraft recently passed from that bubble surrounding the sun into the interstellar medium. So now, whenever people say the Voyagers have left the solar system, they're still technically in the solar system. They just left the heliosphere and passed through the turbulent region that separates the heliosphere from the interstellar medium. It's assumed every star has its own bubble because every star has stellar winds, but they're very hard to observe unless the star is really powerful. So astronomers used the Chandra X-ray Observatory to spot a bubble around a young star. It's very young, but has recently become a main sequence star. Through Chandra, they see 2 sources of X-rays. One is the X-rays from the star itself. The corona is very hot and produces X-rays, giving you that point source. But then you get this bubble from the stellar wind slamming into the local interstellar medium, heating the gas and creating low-level activity across a huge volume of space. This star's solar winds are probably 3 times faster than the sun's and 25 times denser. So you end up with a much bigger bubble. And because this star is a main sequence star that's very sun-like, but very young, perhaps this is what the sun's bubble looked like early in its history. We got the story from Megan Goff. Every week we run a vote right here on the channel, so you can tell us which space news story you liked best. The winner last week was Titan has been bullying the other moons in the Saturnian system. Thank you everyone who voted. We're putting the vote for this week's stories in the community tab, so when you see it pop up on your homepage, go vote. And if you don't see the votes, make sure you're subscribed, click the notifications bell, then check the post tab and vote on past polls so the algorithm starts showing them. Now, I've been telling you to smash the like button, and some of you still haven't seen whatever strange animation YouTube is supposed to show. Apparently, there are like 20 different kinds, but maybe it's just not showing them to you. So go ahead and try pressing like one more time if you enjoyed the video. Or maybe I'm making the whole thing up. You remember back in January when NASA quietly brought a crew of astronauts home from the International Space Station because of a medical issue? They were super vague about it. This week we finally got a statement from astronaut Mike Fink thanking NASA for their attention and saying he's getting great follow-up care. We still don't know exactly what the issue was, and that's fine. Astronauts deserve privacy. But we're already moving on to the next launch, Artemis II. It was supposed to go in early February, then March, but after the latest wet dress rehearsal, they've pushed it to April. Right after last week's episode, we learned the rehearsal didn't go perfectly. They were pumping liquid helium to keep the engines cold and pressurize the tanks. Standard stuff, but something went wrong. NASA decided the safest move is to roll the whole stack back to the vehicle assembly building for repairs. So no March launch. We'll wait for the April window. And if you're disappointed, I kind of warned you. NASA is going to be extremely careful. Story from Matt Williams. Speaking of the Artemis program, we had a pretty big announcement on Friday morning from NASA Chief Jared Isaacman. They're restructuring the plans for the moon landing. Before, Artemis III was going to be the mission that would bring astronauts down to the surface using SpaceX Starship as the human landing system. Isaacman announced they're changing things so Artemis III will now be a test flight in Earth orbit. They'll do a docking test with whatever lunar lander is ready at the time. If Starship is ready, they'll test with that. If the Blue Origin lander is ready, they'll test with that. Then Artemis IV will become the first crewed landing, still targeted for 2028. They also want to speed up the overall launch cadence, so key people aren't constantly rotating in and out. This is fresh breaking news, and we'll see how it all plays out. We know of thousands of exoplanets, but we still have no confirmed exomoons. There are hundreds of moons here in the solar system. So it's almost inevitable we'll find moons around other stars, but we can't just assume them. We have to find them. And there have been many astronomers searching for moons in other systems. It's a very tricky problem. It's hard enough to find planets, but trying to find the influence of a moon orbiting a planet orbiting a star is next level. But astronomers designing the Habitable Worlds Observatory think that telescope, when it comes online, should be capable of detecting Earth-sized exomoons orbiting Jupiter-like exoplanets at about 1 astronomical unit. What'll happen is they'll measure the light coming from a planet. Because the moon will orbit the planet, it will pass behind it and change the reflected sunlight. According to the researchers, the Habitable Worlds Observatory should be sensitive enough to pick out that Earth-sized exomoon orbiting a Jupiter-like planet at 1 Earth distance, as long as the star is within 39 light-years. Another great goal for the Habitable Worlds Observatory. We've got the story from Lawrence Tanya. Now I've got a bunch of cool images to show you. First up, this is Galaxy NGC 1637. The main picture was taken by Hubble. There's one star in particular you want to look at. In 2025, astronomers, using an automated survey, detected a supernova going off in that galaxy. Then they checked archival data from James Webb and realized it had imaged the exact same galaxy fairly recently. They were able to look at the precise spot where the supernova went off and found a red giant progenitor star that was there before the explosion. This is amazing. This has only been seen once before, seeing the star and then seeing it explode as a supernova. And one of the big questions is, what does a red giant look like moments before it detonates? Think about Betelgeuse, right? Come on, Betelgeuse explode already. Well, we need to know what we're looking at so we know when it's going to explode. Next up, we've got the jellyfish galaxy ESO 137-001. Jellyfish galaxies have been seen across the universe. They have this very strange feature where it's like a spiral galaxy, but then there are these streamers trailing behind. What's happening is the galaxy is falling through a galaxy cluster, hitting regions of higher density and getting stripped, causing these streamers. It was believed this was a more modern thing, but now astronomers have found a much older version from about 5 billion years after the Big Bang, or roughly 8.5 billion years ago. It shows once again the universe was able to develop fairly complicated interactions earlier than astronomers anticipated. And finally, this is the exposed Cranium Nebula. And it's such a cool picture. What you're looking at here is a type of planetary nebula about 5,000 light years away. We've known about it for a while. There have been images from Hubble and Spitzer, and they haven't been great. Then we got this image from James Webb, and it is unbelievable. One of the best pictures I've seen this year by far. You're seeing the star that was once like the sun. As it reached the end of its life, it turned into a red giant, started puffing out its outer layers into space, and releasing a lot of other molecules and chemicals. So this outer shell, this light blue shell, that's the hydrogen shell expanding away from the star. Then you've got this more chaotic inner region of other chemicals put off by the star. It will eventually settle back down and become a white dwarf. But it's just such a beautiful picture. And you've got two versions from James Webb, one from NIRCam instrument and the other from MIRI, showing the different wavelengths they can pick up. Different features are resolved in the images. Now, if you want to learn about the science behind all these cool pictures, we've got individual links to all of them. And Evan Goff wrote every one of these stories. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Space Bites here on YouTube. Of course, YouTube isn't our favorite place to show our content. We like a place where you don't have to watch any ads. And of course, that is over on Patreon. So to encourage you to go watch our episodes over on Patreon, remember, this is completely free. There are no ads. We don't put it behind a paywall. You don't have to donate. You can just watch it. We put one extra story, and this week's story is pretty cool. Remember the Hycean world, K2-18b? Well, astronomers have recently scanned it with two of the most powerful radio telescopes on Earth to detect any advanced civilizations sending signals at us. Did they find anything? You're going to have to watch the episode. I'll put a link in the show notes. But if you want even more space news, we are covering so many more stories over on Universe Today, like 30 to 40 stories every single week. And if that feels like it's hard to stay on top of, don't worry. I write a weekly email newsletter that I send out to 70,000 of my closest friends. It contains short descriptions of each one of the stories on the website, cool pictures, and I write every single word myself. There are no ads in it. It's completely free. You can sign up at universetoday.com/newsletter. I did an interview with one of my patrons today, and she reminded me of something we just started doing that I probably haven't told you about, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first, I'd like to thank our patrons. Thanks to Abe Kingston, Andrea Padetti, Barely Griffin, Brian Bod, Caradwin, Shaka Watkins, Commander Bale, Coparelli, Darkfinger, David Gilson, David Matz, Evan.Pro, Greg PHY, James Clark, Jeremy Madden, Jim Burke, Jordan Young, Josh Schultz, Marcel Smith, Michael Barsel, Nordspace, Wumpatep4Animals.org, Parbach, Rankiddo, Richard Williams, Sean Sargent, Stephen Filer, Munley, Team 49, Telescope Scan, Wolfgang Klotz, and Zelda, Galactic Defender, who support us at the Master of the Universe level, and all our patrons. All your support means universe to us. So I was interviewing my patron today, which is a thing that I do. When you join our Patreon, I will send you an email that will say, "Hey, do you want to have a conversation with me?" And then you will set up a time on the calendar and you will talk to me. It's actually me. This isn't AI. This isn't fake. This is really me. Yes, this is the thing I do. I have interviewed 1,200 patrons so far. But she was saying that she heard my original call for joining our Patreon about a year ago, but because we were doing billing by the month, that was not interesting to her. But a couple of months ago, we decided to flick the switch on Patreon where you can do it a year at a time, and there's like a discount. You get a month free. And so she said that was exactly what she was waiting for, and she was able to become a patron for the entire year with just like one purchase on her credit card. So if you have been holding off becoming a patron of us just because you don't want to do the monthly, you want to just do a year in advance, get a bit of a discount, I'll go to patreon.com/universe today, and you can do the same. And of course, you can do an interview with me. Wouldn't that be fun? All right, we'll see you next time. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.